What's going on, guys? Frank Rich, host of the Superhuman Life and men's health and addiction recovery coach. Guys, I'm incredibly honored and blessed to be here today on Ever Forward Radio. So excited to be sharing this time with you. Things that you can look forward to in this podcast is Chase and I's discussion on the importance of never-ending learning, constant growth, constant evolving. We share some of our top books, top takeaways, the importance of mentors, and why the path to overcoming addiction is becoming the person that is no longer addicted. Incredibly excited for you guys to hear this. Hope you find value in it, and we'll see you on the other side.
3, 2, 1.
Frank, what's good, man? How you doing? Welcome to the show.
Good, brother. Excited to be here, man. Appreciate you.
Every time that I hit record and we're officially getting started, I'm like, all right, Chase, don't do that thing where you say, hey, what's going on? Welcome to the show. All right, as if we haven't already spoken. I had an interview last week with Lori Christine King, and a trainer out of Austin, Texas, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was an awkward pause. I was like, I'm sorry. I just had that awkward moment again where we've already been talking and just want to introduce everybody. I'm getting better. You would think after 3 years.
You know, it's so funny you say that because I literally was thinking the exact same thing. The last episode I recorded for my show was done on Friday. And we did the same thing. We did the back and forth kind of 10-minute conversation, a little bit of banter, building some rapport. And then, all right, I'm going to hit record. And then it was like, I never planned the first part of it. You know,
exactly,
I always come into every episode with an idea of where I want the conversation to go. I'm much like you. I keep it conversational, but I never have my opening plan. So literally, like, I hit record and I stared at him for like 10 seconds, and I'm like, "Oh, you're supposed to say something now, Frank."
Honestly, I'm getting back into my roots here. I mean, remote interviews, online podcast interviews is how I started the show, and I did it for the first 2 years almost, and up until I moved to Los Angeles here a year and a half ago. I only began doing it in person, and in person was easy because it's like when you meet a normal human, not to say you're not a human being, normal human being, but when you meet people normally, you know, like, oh, just, you know, small talk, and then you kind of lead into the conversation, and then you really, you know, get into the meat and potatoes of it all. But the whole time in person, we're recording anyway. So I'm kind of having to shift back. I got out of habit, man. I got out of swing of things. And I know habits and awareness and what you're doing is definitely going to be a big part of what we're going to be talking about today, and kind of getting deep into some of those subconscious habits and understanding these triggers for things that we want to change, or maybe we don't want to change yet, but it's important to kind of be aware of these things for the continual journey of optimization, man. But I'm curious real quick before we kind of jump in, you got some good looking books in the background there, and I'm actually, you know, again, getting back to my online remote interviews here, I got my high speed stand-up desk is just books. I got Tim Ferriss, I got Steven Pinker, I got the biggest, thickest books I can to prop up my my laptop here, man. Okay. So those are the two on top of mind for me. Like, take a look back and give me your two favorite books that you can just glance at real quick. What are two reads for you, man?
Oh, brother, man.
I always get hit up for book recommendations. So I'm curious, what are yours?
I get it quite a bit too, man. Books have been a transformative part of my life, and it's really been a staple in my life for decades. I mean, I literally got, at the age of 21, I got introduced to the world of personal development and self-development. I mean, had a mentor way back in the day, Tommy Shelton. He's no longer with us, but the dude changed my life, man. He put 7 Habits of Highly Effective People in my hands for the first time when I was 21 years old, as a sales trainer. So all the classics.
It's a hell of a book to start off with, for sure.
For real. Yeah. I mean, so top 2 recommends, this one's sitting right over here, over my shoulder, right there. Without getting niche and giving specific recommendations, because I could give you fitness books, I could give you mindset books, I could give you recovery books, which is, you know, what I'm very passionate about. But top 2 in the world, it's right here. That's 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. If anybody hasn't heard what this man has to say, the book can be a lot if you're not already kind of somebody that consumes a lot of content. So it's a lot if you're just getting started in reading, but definitely recommend checking out some of his audio or video stuff. He's just got an incredible wealth of knowledge.
Have you seen him live? Have you heard him speak?
I have not seen him in person speak, but I've heard every talk that he's given.
Oh my gosh, man. I saw him live. One of the last kind of like things I did going out and back in DC before we moved was went with a buddy. Shout out Tom if you're listening. Him and I went to see Jordan Peterson and picked up a signed copy of that book, man.
Amazing.
He only talked about one section. He like barely even one chapter, and we were there for like 2 hours. I was just like, I could just sit here all weekend.
Well, it's incredible because, he's taken a lot of those audios and put them up on his Jordan B. Peterson podcast. So you can kind of hear them.
Yeah.
None of it is planned and none of them are the same. You'll hear, he's got some of his kind of go-to things that he talks about.
Some
obviously
themes and commonalities.
Yeah. But every talk is completely different. So top 2 books, let's say that, and keeping it with the classics. There's one just a few sections down from there. That's Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich.
So that blue spine looks pretty familiar there. Yeah,
the blue spine. Yeah. So, I got hundreds of books here, hundreds of audibles. So, without getting specific to like categories, if people are looking for recommendations, Think and Grow Rich, you can't go wrong with it. I read it once a year. And then Jordan B. Peterson, just dive into Peterson.
Those are great, man. And let's keep going here because you definitely have been someone that, and just getting to talk with you originally off the air was, going down this kind of rabbit hole of personal development, of self exploration, of understanding yourself in a lot of different ways so that you can then begin to optimize yourself in a lot of different ways. And for me, when I kind of picked up the first book, that was the aha moment, the epiphany, and kind of was that, honestly, to get into what we'll be talking about later, a little bit of an addiction. Once I realized that I could change, or there were a lot of things going on in my head and my heart that weren't matching my external self, and that I could change that, it honestly became a little bit of an addiction. I became hooked. People say hooked. We say hooked on a lot of things, but I was flat out addicted, and in some ways still am, to just this process of learning. For you, when you began reading all of these things, was it really true for you, just tried and true personal development, self-help, or you branched out and talking about Think and Grow Rich and all these different categories? Is it important to you to kind of think more holistically and get out of maybe a niche category for personal development, to look at finance, to look at history, to look at religion, to look at all these things to kind of just better understand yourself? Or do you kind of stay in a little category here and there?
I answer your question in 2 parts. So from a high level perspective, yes, I go very, very wide because of the work that I'm in and what I'm trying to do. I feel it's my duty and obligation and responsibility to take in as much information, high level information as possible, and then decipher it and refilter it back out to my audience. So, we haven't really got into to much of what I do. You've dropped, addiction a few times, and I think we're going to evolve the conversation to that point. But when I'm specifically working with men and I'm coaching men, they're coming to me for a specific problem. They're dealing with something that they're trying to overcome in their life. Well, there's not just one path for them to do that. So my approach has been, let me go get all the information from that's out in the world that I think maybe has a bit of relevance to what I'm trying to help them with. And then by deciphering it, putting into action for myself, because I'm never going to give something to somebody that I haven't gone through myself. So let me experiment with this idea. Let me experiment with this philosophy. Let me tweak it, make a little bit of my own. So for me, I try to go real wide. So we'll talk psychology. We'll talk just mindset. We'll talk traditional personal development. I'm a Christian, so we'll even talk leadership from a biblical perspective. John Maxwell is a great author for stuff like that. I have a background in fitness, health, and nutrition as well. So I want to study what's occurring from the gut microbiome, from the health perspective, taking in the training. So I'm gonna consume content and information from everywhere, because it's gonna make me grow as a professional, as a coach, give me more tools and more equip myself with more things that I can then pass on to my clients. But then secondly, from a personal perspective, like, I just want to grow. I want to constantly be evolving. You probably only retain 4 30% of what you're reading anyways. So the more I can constantly, consume, this is something I picked up from Jim Quick like a year and a half ago, is I started
Love that guy.
reading and audio at the same time. So all audio at like 2.5x speed. I mean, the books are just like whizzing through, but I'm there at the same time, like notating, highlighting, leaving sticky notes in the book. So I want to grow. I want to evolve for me personally. So that's why I keep it really, really broad. And then there's certain times like just in this past 12 months, I mean, consumed over 20 books on pornography addiction and recovery.
Wow.
It's very specific to what I'm trying to master. So I'll go deep for a short period of time on a specific topic. But then occasionally I'll just kind of like, just what's the top person, top personal development books, just let the internet kind of guide me.
I like that process, man. I think it's really important for the person listening, watching here, is to be, I say this all the time, be a sponge, of course, but be a study of one. N equals one here. Whether it's going to you or to me or these books or these other podcasters, we're all kind of pulling from each other. And so I think if you're aware of that, then you should, realize that it's not one person's one message that is absolute. We all kind of just contribute. We all absorb, and we all hopefully kind of contribute back into the process as well, man.
Yeah. And that's why I think mentioning Think and Grow Rich was so vital at the beginning, because that's really the book that started it all. I mean, this entire industry that you and I are maybe a part of, and all these other books are really a result of the work that Napoleon Hill, did 100 years
he didn't
ago.
even get the full credit due when that came out. It was like, I think greatness usually is kind of overlooked by that generation to a degree. And I think I read something about his book and his work that it came out such a long time ago. It actually only really picked up steam, I think, in the last maybe 20 years or so, in terms of the amount of copies it sold and new editions and all of this stuff.
Yeah, I think probably a guy like Tony Robbins or even Zig Ziglar, which was a little bit pre the Tony area.
Sure.
Napoleon had the ability to reach us through the written word, and that was really it. Nowadays, I mean, what you and I are doing, literally like thousands of miles apart, we can have a conversation, then distribute it out into the world, and people are going to get value out of it.
Yeah.
Well, going back 30 years when kind of Tony came on the scene, it wasn't what it is today, but he was able to take the same information that Napoleon had to write down and able to put it in an audio format. And then that could reach millions of people. Very small percentage of people are readers. Very small percentage, like 1% of the world population actually buys and reads books. So what you and I are doing here with the podcast, like, it's opened up the world of development to other people. And I think that's maybe what kept Napoleon Hill from ultimately reaching the success in his lifetime. But that book, it's sold millions upon millions of copies. And that's why guys like Damon John talk about it. I mean, guys like Tony Robbins, I mentioned him a few times now, like they reference that book as kind of the start of this entire industry that we're a part of.
So you became a sponge, man. You started reading, you started diving in deep, you started doing all the things, listening to all the podcasts and all the audio books, but then you kind of niched down into an area that, for whatever reason, and I'm sure you'll share that reason, was kind of probably calling you out in a way. You began to kind of dwindle down from just learning everything you could to personal development, to subcategory to subcategory to subcategory. And you kind of found yourself studying addiction in a variety of forms, and that probably called you out on some of your own addictions. Can you walk us through, like, how did you really get to that topic? How did you get to that area of study, and what was it calling out in you, man?
Yeah, great question. I think, like most of us working in this space, most of us trying to help people, it's a result of our own growth in an area.
That's 99% it. Yeah. If you're doing it right. Yeah.
Little bit of backstory is, I was in health and fitness. I was a bodybuilder, and I got into bodybuilding because I was an overweight, unconfident kid. So it was my insecurities in the way that I looked and feel that drove me to pursuing the ultimate physique that I could create. I mean,
how many people listening were nodding their head? I'm sure a lot of competitors and athletes were like, yep, I was an anorexic, or I was bulimic, or I had, some kind of issue growing up, and you go the complete opposite direction when you can,
Exactly. So you become obsessed with improving yourself. And then in improving yourself, I think what you gain is you gain this wealth of knowledge that it feels great to transform your own self. That's amazing. But when you can take what you know and what helped you and hand it off to somebody else and see them light up and see them change, for me, that's what drives me. It's leading, it's passing off the information. It would be selfish of me, from a bodybuilding perspective, to say, okay, I'm going to seek out all the best information. I'm going to train with the top elite coaches. I'm going to learn what it takes to get, sub 4% body fat. I'm going to, perfect my posing. I'm going to perfect all of these things, and I'm going to keep it to myself. Like, that would be selfish. So as I was growing, I went online with my business real quick. I don't want to make this story too long, but I went online with my business after working in gyms and doing more of a local thing. I went online at the end of 2016, and I was still an active competitor. I was still competing in the NPC at the time, nationally qualified, and was doing some classic physique shows. And I thought, well, here's a great platform. I mean, 2016 doesn't seem that long ago, but in the world of online businesses, it's like a lifetime.
Oh, it's a decade. Yeah.
Yeah. So
each year in the online entrepreneur space is a decade. I'm going to just make that equivalent. Yeah.
Okay. So we're going back four decades then. I launched a business and I saw moderate success, but what I realized is, I don't want to make this a business coaching talk, but like, I didn't get really clear on a couple of things. I didn't get clear on who I was trying to help. I tried to help every man. I was like, every guy in the world needs more muscle. And I'm the guy that's going to help them do that. So I didn't get clear enough to where I was speaking directly to one type of person. And at the same time, during the first couple of years of my online business, I was still battling with a lot of my own issues and my own demons. I had battled with addictions, substance addictions, sexual addictions, habitual addictions for a very, very long time. In a functioning aspect, whether I was working in corporate America, running my own businesses, my addictions never really took control of my life and prevented me from living a full societal life. Like, people didn't really know what I was going on, but inside is when
would you say you're like a functioning addict in a couple different ways? Okay.
Multiple different ways. Yeah. And I think as I started to put more content out, because like everybody in the fitness industry, your message is always, here's how to look better. Here's how to build more muscle. Here's how to lose weight. But underneath that, you're always teaching this other message. And it's always about becoming a better person. Fitness is a path to personal development. Personal development is a growth of who you are personally. So as I'm putting more content out and I'm starting to spit more and more about becoming the better version of yourself, the greatest version of yourself, all these kind of cliche things that you're saying, what ended up happening is a lot of the issues that I was pushing down that were living inside of me started to show themselves. So I was dealing every day with almost this like imposter type of syndrome. It's like, how are you going out into the world trying to help people, coach people, become a better version of themselves when you haven't even tackled your own underlying issues? So it ultimately came down to me one day saying, this is enough. Like, Frank, you're holding yourself back. Like, you have to stop. And it ultimately came down to vulnerability, sharing my own secrets, sharing my own insecurities, sharing my own darkness with another person. It's, so my addiction, my biggest challenge and struggle was with pornography. Like, I was addicted to porn for over 20 years. And with that, it affected every relationship that I had with a woman. It affected the way that I felt in social surroundings. It affected family. It affected a lot. And it wasn't until I became man enough to look another grown man in the face and say, dude, I think I have a problem. And at that point, I was kind of lost and uncertain of what I needed to do. And this was somebody that I was very, very close with. He was former Marine, like masculine jack dude, unsure of how he was going to respond. He's like, my initial thoughts is like, he's going to kind of brush it off and laugh at me and tell me to man up or whatever. And in that moment, like to have another grown man, as you're admitting all of these secrets about yourself, have him open up his arms and say, dude, I've been dealing with the same thing for close to 10 years. Like that feeling of like, oh, you're actually safe with another person. It felt incredible. And I made a vow to him that day that this was February 14th of last year. So the day of love is when I ended a lifetime battle with pornography. But I made the vow that day that it would be it, that it would never happen. There's a whole story I shared on my first podcast where I had to go home and tell my girlfriend that I was living with at the time, literally ripped a computer apart, like in front of her eyes. Like it was my kind of go-to laptop that stayed inside of the closet. Wow, I pulled it out. I ripped it apart right in front of her, like threw it down. She's breaking down in tears. I start crying at that point. It's just one of these kind of like life-altering moments that for me, if you're trying to overcome like that symbolism of like tearing the computer apart, like I'll never forget the feeling of what that truly feel like, because when people are addicted, they feel like it has full, complete control over them. And that was my way of saying not anymore. So this was it.
You said something there I want to kind of go a little bit deeper on, and I really want to ask the right question here. When we're in this position of being a coach, a mentor, an influencer, a manager, a boss, just anybody in a community who others look to, or you're in the business of working with and molding in some way, I think it's very common for us to kind of come to that same point where I'm hesitant to really share this topic, this thing that's on my mind, because I don't want to come across like I haven't worked on it. How can I talk about this if I haven't fully worked on it? And that could be, a tweak in your exercise programming. That could be a new program you're launching in your business or whatever. I don't have the validity. I don't have the experience. But also there's that other part of it that I would kind of question, as I think, or make the statement that, this is really where people get held back. Is it's not that we haven't really experienced it yet so we can talk on it. It's that we're too scared to share that question. We're too scared to become that vulnerable because we become fearful of the judgment that we think is going to come. We become fearful of, am I going to lose clients? Am I going to lose my job? Is my girlfriend, boyfriend going to break up with me? We become fearful of what could happen, kind of go to worst case scenario. Was the latter more so for you, or was it a little bit of both? And, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think because I got into kind of the online world, like I wasn't big in social media prior to 2016. Like I started Instagram to launch my business. So I didn't have that kind of previous experience of like just going on and sharing stuff socially and kind of sharing your life. I was a private person. Remember, I was private because I was dealing with a lifetime of insecurities and shame and guilt. So when I started to share stuff socially, everything that I put out ran through a filter first. Everything, like best picture. Like I would do photo shoots around my competitions. So I had enough videos and contents and everything to do a literally
only showed the highlight reel for sure.
Here's a post only showing the highlights. So for me, 100%, the big thing about going out was that fear of judgment. Once again, who I was, very anxious, dealing with a lot of self insecurities from my childhood that I hadn't yet faced yet. So yeah, 100%. When I started to put information out into the world and content, for people to consume, the first thing I thought was like, how are people going to judge this? 100% for me, that was a thing.
And you then kind of shared this experience with someone that it sounded like you were kind of making an assumption. I think most people would, just this assumption of the type of person you're talking to, that if I say this out loud, especially to this person, man, they're just going to like rip me a new one. They're going to laugh at me because they're probably, like we're saying earlier, the polar opposite, of this experience, this feeling. Can you really share more of that experience? Can you share more of like, what was it like for the first time? And especially to someone like that, letting that wall down, bringing your guard down.
Yeah. So here we are. This is somebody very, very close. We're part of a group of kind of fitness entrepreneurs that all live here in the Tampa Bay area. So for the past couple of years, we've been meeting up. One of my friends owns a gym that they produce content out of. But every Thursday for the past 2.5, 3 years, we got together. It started with 5 guys. It's grown to 10, 15 guys on Thursdays. We go to his gym, we crush a workout, music blaring, we're pushing each other to perform our best, flipping tires, hammers. I mean, just kind of like
it's
testosterone driven.
Full beast mode. Yeah, man.
Shirts are coming off, dudes are sweating, So this was the environment of where I met Zach. Like I met him in the gym, sweaty bros, like whatever. We'll go to lunch. It was after one of those workouts. A bunch of the guys were headed out to lunch. I'm like, Zach, I don't have time to go to lunch. He's like, dude, well, let's hang out for a bit. So we're literally sitting in my car outside of the gym, just kind of having a, life conversation. Mm-hmm. Like I said, these guys have become a part of my family. So Zach was in school. So what's going on with school? How's your work? How's your coaching business? Anything I can help you with? Type of conversation, just every week kind of stuff. It was actually Zach that started and brought the topic up. He is a yoga instructor, former military, certified coach, trainer, and he was big into studying Wim Hof at the time. So he was sharing these breathing exercises that he was doing every single morning to help harness his sexual energy and how he was able to really elevate his performance at school, coaching, gym, everything, because he was going through this breathing exercise.
You said he was a former Marine?
Former Marine. Yep.
Damn, I don't know too many Marines that turn into yogis. That's amazing, man.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. Episode 2 of my podcast. I had to get him on.
No doubt, man. It reminds me of Mark Devine, this former decorated Navy SEAL commander turned Zen warrior. I'm like, how does that happen, man? But it's incredible. Zach did this. He did this retreat up in like the Carolinas. It was like 7 days of solitude. Practicing yoga by yourself, like you couldn't talk to anybody while you were there. Like a Vipassana.
Yeah, incredible. Yeah. So he was telling me that he was going through this breathing exercise and that it was actually helping him not view porn. And I'm like, what do you mean, like not view porn? Like you had a problem? So he starts to share with me about how he was in Afghanistan 5 times a day, how they actually kind of encourage it in the military. Like, here's a way for you to handle your energy. I did a whole episode on this and how it's got major repercussions. So I think at that point, because he was open and sharing, I had already kind of been looking at things. I'd been reading books, listening to podcasts on the addiction of porn, because still at the time I was like, do I really have a problem? I'm like, don't all guys watch porn? Like, this is a normal thing. I'm like, no, so I'm having this
normalizing it. Yeah, I think most people do with any kind of addiction. Yeah.
But when he opened up and shared it with me, I was like, Frank, here's your opportunity. Like, you've never shared this with anybody. So right then and there, man, I was like, dude, thank you so much for what you said. I'm like, can I share something with you? And then I just kind of like let it go. I'm like, this is what I've been dealing with. I first got introduced to porn when I was, 6, 7 years old. I don't remember the age.
Wow, that's young.
I really got addicted, around my mid to late teens when the internet became, so I'm 36. I don't know. I think I'm a few years older.
Yeah, I'm 34. Yeah.
Yeah. So the internet, when I was in my early teens, like it wasn't a thing, but probably around 16, 17, like got my first computer, like in my room. It was like, I used to have to like go run into the woods to like see the magazines, but now I could like see here. So I told him, man, I was like, thank you so much for that. I didn't realize that other people were dealing with this. Let me share with you what I was going through. And we connected like brothers, but like brothers on a different level. And it was that day, like I said, I made a promise to him, and like what I feel a good man should do when he's making a promise to one of his best friends. Like, I've held up, my end of the bargain. The challenging part was the drive home. Cause I told him the first thing that needed to happen was I needed to share it with Stephanie. Stephanie is my girlfriend. We're still together, but at the time our relationship was very rocky. We were still living together, but it was very, very rocky. And I knew in order for me to actually execute and follow through with this, I had to share it with her. You know, like when you move in with somebody, whether or not you're married, if you move in, like you open up your life, and here's a whole part of my life that she wasn't familiar with. So if I was going to be able to overcome this, if I was going to be able to truly break free, like that was the first thing I needed to do, was share with her. So the hardest part of that whole thing was literally that 40-minute drive home, like driving over like the bridge from one bay to the other bay.
Oh, I can imagine that inner monologue, man. Yeah.
Back inside of my head, dude, you don't need to do this. She'll never know. Like what's Zach going to say if you show up next week and you're like, dude, I've been watching. You know, like just, it was very tough to where literally like I had to wait till the next morning to get the strength to do it. Yeah. But like I shared with you, that whole computer incident and everything was life changing.
That's amazing, man. You said something else in there that I think a lot of guys would say, yes, that absolutely is a contributing factor to my bros, to my male relationships. You know, when we do just kind of, you know, I've got gym buddies. You know, when you get into kind of that environment of just heavy testosterone, you're moving weight or just whatever it is. You know, I can go back to my time in the military when me and my squad were out there, literally my squad. Now it's just my squad. But my actual squad back in the military, when we go out in the field or whenever we would do anything, working any mission, like it was that unique kind of testosterone driven, high energy, just like cool shit that really provided an environment and experience of bonding, of relationship building that solidified bonds for life, for sure. And I love my military friends. I love my gym friends and those kind of people. And you got your great workout group as well. But I can tell you the most significant male relationships in my life, just my friends, my guys that are my brothers, are the ones that we do that. But then we can also do a breathwork class, that we can just talk about trauma, that we can talk about like, I'm scared about my business, I'm worried about my relationship. Go like extreme polar opposites. Like we seem to be kind of re-bringing this theme up here of having both ends of the spectrum kind of necessary to the male experience, to the male bonding experience. Can you talk more about that? Would you agree? You know, what is so unique about these kind of polar opposites that just really is so necessary for meaningful relationships with each other, but also for our own self?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so fortunate and blessed kind of at the stage in my life where I'm at. I have a group that in a way kind of services both of those. So this group of, you know, fitness entrepreneurs that I was telling you about, all of them highly successful. I mean, running 7, some 8-figure businesses. So yeah, we can get together on Thursday afternoon around lunchtime, like flip the music on, we're all in our gym clothes, grunting, sweating, screaming. But at the same time, this is the same guys that like I can pull into one of their offices or pull them collectively into a group and say, all right, this is my business. This is where I'm trying to get to right now. And these are what I feel is limiting me. And they'll take a very unbiased look at it and break it down. These are the same guys that I am a part of a mastermind, and that incorporates faith, fitness, family. It's the only mastermind that I've been a part of that actually encourages the business owner to bring their significant other too. There's a whole relationship component taught in one half of the day. So how is an entrepreneur, you know, I'm not married to Stephanie. We share our life together, but every other entrepreneur in the room, for the most part, is married. How do they juggle being an entrepreneur, but then also being a husband, or being an entrepreneur and also being a partner in life, being an entrepreneur and also sharing your home and sharing your home's responsibilities? So yeah, the importance of having, I think the polar opposites is I think men need male role models, you know, and a role model doesn't have to be somebody 20 years your senior. I mean, you have inspired me and in a way has been a role model for the type of podcasting that I want to do. You know, you talked about having to pivot back to doing these video Zooms. The first 3 episodes I did in person. I did like the circuit of my friends. But now I've done all this, but dude, I've 100% like, I know exactly what the podcasting studio will look like when I finally get to the point of when we're 100% recording in Zoom. So I think as a man, like, yeah, you need those bros, you need that like testosterone that's going to like push you from performance to be your best, whether that's, you're in a sales team and you got two sales dudes that are really running ship and they're leading the company. Those guys are competing. Like, it's in our nature as testosterone.
Yeah, certain times really demand to be successful. You need adrenaline, you need testosterone, you need these innate hormones and characteristics to a man that we tend to possess a little bit more of. Hopefully I'm not pissing off any female listeners. I'm trying to be politically correct when I'm talking, but you understand what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. Yeah, okay. But at the same time, like, I think being competitive, being aggressive is only a small piece of who we want. As a complete, holistic, use the term holistic. I think a very holistic approach to my coaching. But 36, like, I need to start thinking about the complete man. The Frank bodybuilder, the physique, that was one phase. But now it's like, what type of business person do I want to be? What type of neighbor? Like, what type of person do I want to show up to my neighbors? What type of person do I need to be locally at my church? What type of, service type of individual? So I think it's finding those people in your life that are living up maybe just a few steps ahead of where you're at, but are already living through with what you're trying to become, That's why I'm so big on coaches and mentors and just surrounding yourself with guys that are a step or two ahead of you, that you can see, this is where I want to be. And then you can kind of reverse engineer. Well, okay, so Mike is doing it that way with his wife. Like, let me look at this. Okay, perfect. Frank, you're not that person. So change this. And then go to Mike and say, hey, how you handle that conversation with your daughter, like just being open with it. But I think you got to have the model of where you're trying to go to. Because if not, you're just kind of like blind running around, like trying to grow. Who are you going to grow into if you don't know what you're trying to become?
You've been kind of talking about it here, but if you could really think a little bit more succinctly and describe it, what is your model for looking at these people, these men in your life, to not only just see what are they doing that resonates with me, Frank, in this compartment of my life, but then how you can also interpret that to then pass it on? Do you have like a system? Do you have a model for looking at people to learn and to be a sponge, to apply to your life, but then also be able to translate effectively to people in your life, to your clients, to your community? Can you walk us through that, or do you have kind of a clear model?
Yeah, it happens so kind of organically for me. But let me kind of break this down. First thing I've done, since 2017 is if I surrounded myself with men that are impacting through their work. So I've done tons of different jobs, working in corporate America, sales positions, personal training, selling gym memberships, all these different things, none of them purpose driven. So for me, number one, like, is the guy's life driven by his purpose, and is he impacting others with some form of work that he's doing? It doesn't specifically have to be their main career and main calling. For most of the guys that I look to for mentorship now, that is the case. Is they've built their careers and their businesses around a service of impacting others with what they're most passionate about doing. So
can you say that again, please? I think it's really important for everybody to pick up on.
So building your career and your life around the service of others through a passion that you have. So I think exactly what you're doing here. So for me, a lot of my friends and network, literally, if you scroll through my phone, 90% of the guys in there are in some way doing online coaching, consulting, training, or some other business, really in the health, fitness, kind of mental space. So for me, it's like looking at the guy as what is the impact that he's having on in the world. Secondly, where does his family, line up? Like, how does his family and his wife speak of him? Little things like watching the way that a husband and wife interact when the kids are present will tell you a lot about both people individually, tell you a lot about the couple as well. So how do they handle situation? I'm an observer of people, I guess, is really the best thing.
I'm with you, man. Likewise, yeah.
We talked about it with the books. I mean, I've been massively obsessed with studying humans for my life. So always looking at how they're handling situations. And then guys that are going to have something a little bit different. So I'm somewhat of an introvert, like you can't put me in a big group and like, I'm not going to be the one that like, I love doing this. I love sharing. I love turning the camera on and I love talking to one person through a camera. But you put me like in a room of like 100 people. I'm the guy that's like leaving the exit door. So I think finding guys that strengths are my weaknesses. So looking at what they're doing service wise and how they're impacting the world, looking at how they line up with their family and what their family, even the way a daughter treats a dad will tell you a lot about the relationship that you don't see really happening. So very, very little things. So it's hard to say like in a blanket statement, like this is the process, because it's just understanding human psychology at a high level, and then just observing people.
Yeah. Constant observation for sure. Constant observation with, I should say, through the lens of application. Like I'm not just watching for the sake of watching. I'm watching to learn and to take notes so that I then can apply. Because knowing without doing is the same thing as not knowing. Right.
Yeah. If you're just sitting there watching people, you're kind of creepy.
That's also creepy. Yeah. That's also go back, get back in your van, shave your mustache, and move along there, sir. You said something really important there as well, Frank. Observing others to find their strengths to kind of fill your weaknesses. And I think someone might hear that and say, well, that sounds like something, a weak person would say. Why are we admitting to all of our weaknesses? I think there's nothing stronger than admitting your weaknesses and finding others to kind of not plug that hole, but to learn from, and then you fix that hole yourself, because it's not finding these people to become reliant on to always solve your problems, or to, if this issue ever comes up in my life, I can always go to this person, but you can go to them for a certain amount of time to learn, to put the tools in your own toolbox, to learn how to solve that problem on your own, to patch up that hole in your own ship, so to speak. But then, of course, just knowing they're always there to kind of reference is a plus, right?
Yeah, and I would say that, isn't the lack of admitting your weaknesses probably the biggest weakness that a person can have? None of us are perfect. If you're going to achieve success in anything in this world, it doesn't have to be business success. It doesn't have to be fitness success. It can literally be like, you can't successfully create a child without another person. Like everything that you're going to do in this world requires the help of another individual. So not wanting to build a team of people around you. This was the biggest mistake I probably made as an entrepreneur going back to 2016, 2017, is I had some financial success online and previous to that in a business that I just ran completely on my own. But when I got into more of the coaching online business, I didn't equip myself with a team. I tried to be the funnel builder, the tech guy, the integrator, the copywriter, the designer,
we're all there, yeah.
the video, and it's like, I spun my wheels for two and a half years. And it wasn't until I finally realized, like, Frank, identify your 5% that you're like really, really good at doing, and then just offset everything else. So that's in business, but in life too, like athletes have coaches, they have Michael Jordan had a trainer, and then he had Phil Jackson, and then he had a nutritionist, and then he had a chef, and he had a personal assistant. Like I think going back to it, man, like not admitting that you have weaknesses and acknowledging them is the biggest weakness that you're ever going to have in life. So
yeah. And going back to kind of the main item here that was the weakness you were seeking to become stronger at, to, kind of overcome these addictions and specific addiction. How do you now make sure that those are taken care of? How do you now make sure that they're, I hate to say not just dead and gone, because I'm sure, addiction is always kind of lingering. Old habits are always kind of lingering and can be triggered in unique ways now, but you're a more learned guy now. You've understood these triggers more. How do you kind of keep these less than ideal habits at bay? How do you keep these old addictions at bay?
For one, I have a clearly defined vision on where I'm trying to go in my life. Everything that I'm trying to create. Very, very clear on exactly what I'm trying to do with my business, what I'm trying to do with my body, what I'm trying to do financially, what I'm trying to do in my relationship. Kind of have these 5 F's that I built my life around: faith, fitness, finance, family and freedom. So freedom being like the time that you spend when you're not working. So what hobbies, activities, et cetera, do you partake in? So it started with clearly defining, not just 5 and 10 years in the future, but then in order for me to successfully get there, where do I need to be in 3 years? Where do I need to be in a year? Where do I need to be in 6 months? Where do I need to be in 90 days? Where do I need to be in 30 days? Where do I need to be at the end of this week in order for all of that to happen? So I had to get very, very clear on where I'm going and then the path that it's going to be for me to get there.
Yeah. Clear and effective goal setting.
Yeah. Very, just like you, very busy, pulled in a lot of different directions, from coaching, from running the online business, through marketing, through guest podcasting. Like I'm going in a lot of different directions through other service work that I do here. So I literally schedule my day in like 30-minute increments from the time that I wake up at 4:40 in the morning to the time that I go to bed, between 8:45 and 9 o'clock at night. Like there's a 30-minute window that I can't really tell you exactly what it is that I'm doing. I'm not perfect in this way. But because so much of what we do on a daily basis happens unconsciously, I think 70% of our day is just our unconscious habits and patterns. I needed to spend a significant amount of time reprogramming myself. So what's the first thing I do when I wake up? What's the first thing I do when I'm done eating? Like the littlest, tiniest bits.
We're looking to reduce that squirrel brain, looking to reduce a little bit of that spinning the wheels. What do we need? Infrastructure, structure in the tiniest bit. And that just means time blocking. Just what are you doing with your time? Absolutely. And then you can look back and actually answer that question. What did I do all day? Instead of just sit there and wonder about the ends of the universe.
Exactly. I mean, this is tips that I've shared with like big time influencers. I don't have a massive, social media following, but even like chunk blocking my Instagram time. Like making it known that, from 11:30 to 12, like this is what I'm doing. And it's building discipline. Like, the first week of doing it, like you may only shoot 5 out of 7, second week, you may go 6 out of 7. Like, but it's constant repetition. I mean, you and I are fitness guys. It's like, how do you build bigger biceps? Do more repetition.
You got to get the reps in. Yep.
Yeah. How do you run a faster mile? Well,
I don't know, man. I've been doing all the bicep reps my entire life. These things never grow. I don't know. My big numbers jump, but man, the inches in the biceps never grow. So I got to accept that.
I got a program. I'll have to send you. I have a unique training protocol that I've done. It's kind of a consecutive 2-day training. So actually train the muscle when it's somewhat fatigued and sore. And just more of kind of like a frequency type of set. So it's not high volume, but literally like 12 hours after, like, let's say one day you do like, 12 sets of bicep curls. So you're a little sore, little feeling the next day. Just go in and hit it first part of your workout for like 6 sets, real high volume. Just kind of recirculate that blood flow. You re-signal muscle protein synthesis. So you can actually extend the growth period out for an additional day, dude. I just
need to like CT Fletcher and just command you to grow.
Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, I think, how have I been able to, hold control of these temptations and triggers and addictions? It's planning, and then just over time, just the building of disciplines, and also acknowledging that I'm not perfect. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to get weak. I'm not going to fail because I'm not going to allow that to happen. But as long as I can acknowledge that the other 3 are going to make themselves into my life, as long as I have identified. So it's a process of also understanding, like, early on, what were my triggers? What were the thoughts, feelings, emotions that I went to that led me to do this? So this is
doing the initial work to understand those triggers.
Yeah.
First
So this is more of like your kind of initial work of coaching, of understanding what these things are. So this gets very specific with the type of individual that you're working with. But for me, I had to understand, like, okay, if I'm alone at the house, done with work, this happens. Okay, well, the minute that you're feeling this, go do this. Like building a secondary default that your body turns to. So it's a constant work. I have to remind myself on a daily basis of what my goals are, what my visions are. I have them written, in a notebook, constantly referring to those, and sharing it, like ultimately, like,
yeah, I was going to say, I really think the secret sauce here is that community, man. You've opened this up to other people for accountability.
100%. Like I can't, I can't have this conversation with you and then 10 minutes when we're off the call, like revert back to who I was 2 years ago. Like something's not in line there. So I think a constant community, constant fellowship, just constant vulnerability. And then now, and this is a part of, as the guys come towards the end of my program, is I try to flip the script for them, is I try to help them as well go from being mentee to mentor. So, if you and I were working and you came to me like, Chase, like we're going to work you through this. We're going to go through 3 months of really focused work on you. But in month 4, our focus is going to be on you now going out and leading somebody else. So kind of pass that baton on. It does 2 things. It grows the mission and really builds the army of what I'm trying to do.
Passing the baton off, man.
Just like it's worked for me. I can't constantly go on these podcasts and constantly create content about this, but then not be living. You can't transfer to a person that you are not experiencing yourself. So as long as I'm constantly reassuring, constantly sharpening my soul, sharpening my tool, constantly improving my discipline, makes me a greater tool and resource to help a guy like you or somebody else out there that needs it.
No, I think you're right there in the Freudian slip, sharpening your soul. Yeah. Absolutely, man. Well, Frank, this has been a great conversation, man. And we can substitute the word for the person listening who maybe you don't think that you have an addiction to anything. Look, caffeine, hello. It's probably the most common addiction people have here in the world. Pornography, alcohol, substance abuse. You can definitely be addicted to, their orthorexia. You can be addicted to trying to eat too healthily all the time. Addictions are just little slippery slopes of habits that get away from you that we justify. Absolutely.
Yeah. If I could at this point, I think, I have a very clear. I don't think it's like Webster's definition, but for me, an addiction is a repeated behavior done over and over that does not serve you. So with understanding that addiction, that definition, like I would say, you can have a caffeine habit. And as long as your caffeine habit, it's not holding you back. Like if it gives you a little boost of energy, a little focus to produce the work, to be the great host on the podcast that you are, to be the great content producer, to be the great coach. If it helps contribute to that, not an addiction. With health and fitness, if you're at the gym 6 days a week for 2 hours, but that's all a part of you becoming the better version of yourself, maybe not an addiction. So the way that I've tried to deem the word addiction or define the word addiction is a repeated behavior done over and over again that does not serve you. The key being does not serve you. And in the form of a pornography addiction, can't think of anything good that came out of my life from viewing porn. So that in and of itself,
Yeah, unless maybe some people pick up some good new moves to really impress their partner or something. I don't know, but it's very, I'm sure, very few and far between. It's because look, especially in that world, it's done out of secrecy. Most often, it's done out of probably a subconscious mindset of shame, of keeping this hidden. Of if it wasn't any of those things, then you would be doing it out in the public and with other people. And again, that's a creepy move. So don't do that. Shave your mustache, get back in your van and get out of here. Right. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Also illegal. You can't do that in public. It's illegal. But Frank, it's been great having you on here, man. Before we kind of get right to the end here, where can somebody go to connect with you more, online, in the Florida area? Of course, I'll have all your stuff down in the show notes, but where are you hanging out the most online, man?
Yeah, I think for people listening to this show, the best 2 places right now are on my podcast, The Superhuman Life. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, all of the platforms. So just search The Superhuman Life. Very similar type of flow as to what we did here. And then on Instagram, it's at The Superhuman Frank. And if you don't mind, I have a guide. If somebody got this conversation,
perfect.
we didn't talk a lot about the actual, process of overcoming, the porn addiction, but I do have a free guide online. It's 7 steps to living your life without porn. So that's at the7stepguide.com. Just put your email address.
I'll make sure to have that. You guys can just go down the show notes, click it, take you straight there. Absolutely. Thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank you.
You've definitely been talking about how you propel your life forward and been moving forward, but I got to know, man, what does that mean to you? How do you now live a life ever forward? What is that phrase? What is that meaning? Or what does it have for you, man?
Yeah. I think we touched on it a bit, having a clearly defined destination on where I'm trying to go. So understanding the life that I want to create in those kind of 5F components. So, what's my faith life going to look like? What's my fitness, my family, my finance, and then my freedom. So having a clearly defined vision of that, and then doing everything I can within my power every single day to optimize the time that God has given me. Because I know tomorrow is not promised. So making the most out of every single 24 hours that I have, as long as it's working towards that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much for your time today. We've had both of these guys on the show before, and one of them you remind me of, and the second I think would be a great connect for you. Have you ever gotten Grant Ziak? Do you know him? On Instagram, Grant Me a Body.
Yeah, I
just intense guys, like big fitness guys, like beards, of course, but like, man, your attitude is so on par.
Funny. I met Grant back in 2016 at Lewis's house, first Summit of Greatness. So I think Grant was still living in Ohio at the time. We connected briefly. I think we're connected socially, but if you can do the intro, I definitely know who he is.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, you guys. Like, this looks like his long lost like brother or something, just like high energy, good purpose. Yeah.
It's so funny because he was actually he was a beard inspiration for me. When I met him, we were both, we were both kind of clean shaven. Like I had more of kind of like the scruff that you had. Yeah. But as I started growing it back in 2018, I'm like, okay, who online's got like a sharp looking beard? And he was one, dude, I can't tell you how many times I went to Stephanie. I said, do you think I can look like this guy? Do you think I can look like this guy? And it was him. It was Grant Me a Body. So I would 100% take that.
Absolutely. Oh, you guys we got to connect you too. And another guy who he was, I think, my last, if not like my second to last in-person interview before COVID hit. Traver Boehm. He is a guy out of Colorado. I should say Colorado. Got to keep my local tongue there. And it's all, his background is all in overcoming addiction and just these kind of like the dark habits that we don't want to let rise to the surface that is preventing us from our fulfillment. He's done a lot, man, in terms of background of strength and conditioning coach, relationship loss, overcoming addiction in pornography and substance abuse and things like that. Man, this guy, it was an incredible conversation. You guys definitely I got to connect you to as well. I think you would have some kindred spirits for sure, man.
No, for sure, man. I'll take those 100%.
Dope. Awesome, man. Well, Frank, thanks again for coming on, man. It's been great. Thank you all for listening, for watching here. We're going to have all of Frank's the conversation here in the video and the audio, his content over on Superhuman Life for you guys to check out. And give him a shout out. Definitely let him know, like, hey, like, yeah, you definitely got the Grant Ziak beard game going on. We got to get like a beard off or something, but let us know your feedback on this. And I would love to know what your listeners, what your definition of addiction is here. And if that means something new to you or just different to you now after maybe understanding Frank's story. It's been wild, man. Thank you.